If not for the pandemic, Canadians would be tuning into playoff hockey right now. The NHL canceled its season back on March 12th and is now trying to figure out where it can host the remainder of the season, if there is one. Edmonton Mayor Don Iveson says his city would be a perfect fit. He's written a letter to NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman arguing Edmonton has very few cases of COVID-19 and the province is a world leader in per capita testing. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is also backing the bid. Mayor Iveson joins us from his city, from Edmonton. Hi, Mayor. Good to see you.
Hi, Bashi. Nice to see you, too.
So explain to our viewers why you think Edmonton is the right city to be a hub city for the NHL.
Well, I was born and raised here and saw the team in its glory days. And so hockey runs deep in all Canadian cities, especially Edmonton. But we had 0 new cases yesterday in a major Canadian city, which is great news. High testing per capita, as you mentioned, great facilities, including, we spent $1 billion on great recreation centers that unfortunately are closed as public health measures right now, but would be ideal training sites. And of course, we would amidst the financial crisis that cities are facing across this country, not expect to subsidize or give any of that away for free. But we understand the NHL would be willing, in the cities it works with, to pay all the costs related. And that would give me a chance to hire back some facility technicians, Zamboni drivers, and for the folks in the hotels in wherever city this lands, it'll make a big difference, provided this is done, and this is the other caveat besides having all costs covered, provided this is done with the highest standards with respect to public health and employee safety for players, for officials, for trainers, and for hospitality staff who would be supporting them. So with those caveats, it'd be great to see hockey come back to a great Canadian hockey city, and we think we can make a strong case here in Edmonton.
I want to ask you about both those caveats, and the first is I'm glad you brought up cost, because from my time reporting in your city, one of the biggest memories I have is the great debate that occurred over whether public money should be injected into the building of the arena. So you're saying that no public money would go into this?
Yeah, bottom line is that any use of civic facilities would have to be covered. The city has a 9-figure budget problem related to COVID that we're managing, and so the net new economic activity would be welcome, but all costs would have to be covered, direct costs. So that's a bottom line for us, and I think every other city is that would be bidding on this is in the same kind of crisis. So I think the league understands that from our conversations with the Oilers Entertainment Group. So we've had reassurance in writing that they're not asking the city to, ante up in any way other than to make available facilities, again, that are closed right now and that I'm losing money because I can't charge admission to the public because it's not safe to bring people in. So it's a way to activate those facilities and showcase the city and get something on TV to watch that's fresh.
Other than Power and Politics is what you mean.
Yes, after this, of course.
On the public health aspect of it, have you received any, you said you got assurances where cost is concerned. Have you received any assurances when it comes to all those public health concerns that you laid out?
Well, they're, and they deserve all the kudos and spotlight, but they're extraordinary professionals and scientific experts, our medical officers of health, both nationally and at the provincial and regional scale. And Dr. Hinshaw here in Alberta would have to be satisfied, and her staff and her team, that all of the people working in this setting were going to be safe and that the quarantine measures would be adequate, not only to protect the players, but to protect Edmontonians and Albertans as well. And so I have great faith in our medical health officers, and I'm sure the federal government, particularly around border issues, would also need to be satisfied. And so with all of those appropriate caveats and with trust in those officials, I think if the NHL can satisfy those officials, then I would be satisfied too. But I think that's an important presumption that the public health imperatives, which have been front and center for all of us for the last 8 weeks, must also apply to players for their safety and for our protection.
Is there any discussion around testing? And I ask because I've listened to the back and forth south of the border around some of the leagues, professional sports leagues reopening there, and the amount of testing that would be required to make sure that those public health considerations are addressed adequately. Is there a conversation occurring about testing? Is there enough available capacity so that no NHL player basically would get a test instead of somebody else in the greater public, or in front of or ahead of?
Well, it would be my expectation, I think a reasonable public expectation, that testing for the league and its officials would be the league's business. It would, again, have to satisfy technical requirements laid out by Alberta Health Services and by the Canadian Public Health authorities, but that would be part of the element of this that would be at their expense. I don't mind if the hotel workers who can go back to work need a test from the public system here, because I think they're Albertans, they pay their taxes, and they'd actually be able to pay taxes if they can go back to work. So I think we have to be reasonable about that, but certainly I think the league's testing threshold would need to be from their supplies and at their expense. But Alberta is now undertaking one of the most ambitious testing and tracing regimes in the world, and so credit where credit's due to the government of Alberta and Alberta Health Services for creating an environment that even allows this conversation to happen. But clearly, boundaries need to be set that the league would have to own all of those costs and not take resources away from Albertans or Edmontonians.
Is the federal government? I know the Premier says that he backs the bid. Is the federal government involved in these conversations at all?
Well, I understand the federal government is part of the conversation. Clearly, there's public health and border implications. Clearly, there's economic upsides, and it is the national game. So they're involved. I can't speak for them. Certainly, we've communicated through various channels to the federal government that we'd like the opportunity to pursue this from an economic point of view and just from a spirit lifting point of view. And the Oilers were on a tear this year after so many years of heartbreak. So we want to see this season through, right? Edmontonians have been itching to see McDavid and Draisaitl and the fellas get a chance to really show us what they can do.
For people who are watching and itching for that and also eager to watch it on TV, do you have any kind of indication as to a timeline when a decision might come down?
Well, I don't have a sense of the timeline. I mean, I think it's moving quickly around decision, but I also think that there are ongoing conversations with those medical health officer of health authorities, and that should take however long it needs to take. And then the resumption of play would still be some ways off around hammering out agreements for rental of civic facilities in whatever cities are lucky enough to get to host, and also all of the other details around, quarantine and wait periods and so on and so forth. Again, so provided all that can take place, generally what we've heard is they're shooting for hockey sometime over the summer. So we could hear Hockey Night in Canada, the anthem playing in July and August, which will be odd, but it won't be the strangest thing that happens during COVID-19.
Yeah, there's lots of odd stuff everyone's dealing with. Thank you, Mayor Iveson. I appreciate your time tonight, as always.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.